Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast, a left-wing podcast where we take on the horrible headlines and bullshit in the media and try to make comedy out of it. We'll see. I'm your first host, Alex.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Aiden. And I'm the captain now. So
There it is.
Buckle up. This ship has seatbelts. So I've learned from my past mistakes. I've learned that sometimes what I think is okay is incredibly dark and frustrating. And so this is not going to be that, he said, knowing that he was lying through his teeth the whole time. Let's begin with a nice check-in on the comparative culture wars between America and the ROK, the lovely country of South Korea. So apparently this is what's concerning people over in South Korea. This is from the Korea Times. Does serving spicy food to young children violate human rights?
That is great. Are these the stakes of Korean politics?
This is the most like grandpa article. It's like, the food's too spicy these days. It's Kim Jong-un's fault.
It's gone nuclear.
This is a real article from the Korean Times?
You betcha.
I mean, what could the argument possibly be? That basically young children can't consent to know, or even have the experience to know that the food will be too spicy, and so when you first introduce it to them, it's like not fair to them?
I guess so. I guess, yeah, because spice, capsaicin causes pain, so you're abusing your kids, even though kids are notoriously picky and will not eat anything that they don't want to.
Wait, was this from a North Korean publication or a South Korean publication?
Okay.
I'm assuming South Korean.
I didn't read the article, but I'm fairly confident in South Korea.
So I'm assuming it is a South Korean paper talking about North Korea, right?
What? No, well, I think this is an in South Korean like culture piece.
Well, because let's put it this way. Violating human rights is not really something that states tend to talk about themselves unless they're being like ironic. Or,
it's not a state publication.
Well, we don't get that many articles, for instance, from the U.S. about like, our prisons violating, black people's human rights, or like from Israel, is Gaza violating Palestinians' human rights? It's usually from outside sources.
We've
looking into
some.
See,
go ahead.
That's why I said it was a culture war thing, because I think this is exactly like parents getting bored about not having something to be worried about for their kids in South Korea, a relatively modernized country, and not relatively very modernized country, and choosing this as their current battle worth their time.
Well, the thing I was working towards, because the way I read this was South Korea finding yet another reason to be irritated with the North Korean regime is probably like, and they're serving them spicy food, right? That was my assumption about what this title was, which would be especially grotesque when you consider that there's like a starvation problem.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That joke can't work because the issue would be not getting served food.
Well, right. Well, that's what I was getting to. It's like beggars can't really be choosers when the country's on the brink of starvation, and has been for decades.
We've talked about this before internally. North Koreans and South Koreans do not view the differences amongst each other the way the rest of the world sees the differences. The fact that we refer to it as South Korea is our own political take on this. Korea is one country that we have split into two. So
yeah, we've engineered the circumstances.
Right, but my point is South Koreans don't like chide and deride North Korea like fucking human right violators. No, that's not how they view the same ethnic people as them. Most
of them don't, though. There certainly could be like a right-wing paper that chooses to. I don't know if this is the equivalent of like their, New York Post or whatever.
No, this is probably the equivalent of their New York Times.
Well, that's right, exactly. We don't have the context to know what kind of tone this was coming.
But my point is, America likes thinking we run the world. And we like projecting our political views onto every other country. So when we talk about China, we bring with that all our context and hatred towards what we perceive as communism. When we talk about North and South Korea, we bring all our perspective, which is South Korea good, North Korea bad. Like, we paint over other countries' political intricacies with a gigantic fat brush that has zero detail to it. And so to me, I don't know. I think this is what Aiden was getting at, which like this is an extremely niche. We have nothing to complain about. Things are going actually relatively well here, despite them having some.
This is a first world problems article.
Yes, except they actually do have some weird problems with their prime ministers, and South Korea's had some political issues recently. But I think to Aiden's point, this is like a light news day. Let's talk about this bullshit that we found on like a Twitter thread, where people are mad at like spicy Asian food.
I mean, honestly, whether it's about their own food or whether it's about the North's food, at the end of the day, I think I actually have basically the same critique, which is like, they could also be writing about how people are starving to death, like in the same basic part of the world, in the same countries.
Yeah, but people probably aren't starving in South Korea, really.
No, what I'm saying is that, we're going back to the premise that like they're still basically just one group of people called Koreans, and most of them want to reunify under some scheme or another. Lots of people still have families, stranded on the other side of the border who are facing starvation because of the problems in North Korea. But before we get too far, a lot of people probably don't understand why North Korea is constantly on the edge of starvation. So I'll just give like a very brief historical context. Because Korea was divided into two parts, North and South Korea, the country, which had functioned as a single country because it had different like geographical elements in each part, did not function as two because North Korea is like 80% mountains.
Cut America in half, and what happens to our farming?
Yeah, it would be like asking America to subsist without the heartland's food on the same volume of consumption, which is not realistic. So North Korea has great mining and industry regions, but like there's not a lot of arable land, and there's not, it's not as much coastline to fish and all those things. So like they're constantly on the edge of food crisis because they don't really have the natural ability to sustain it, and they're under constant embargo and restriction.
Yeah, I was going to say the sanctions don't help.
So it's the same issue as pretty much everywhere, which is we try to, as the West, always say like, oh, socialism and communism makes you run out of food and supplies. It's like, no, capitalist embargoes make you run out of food and supplies because you've artificially separated these people from international trade and commerce. So yeah, like North Korea for a long time, the Soviet Union supplied a lot of food to Korea in exchange for other resources, and it worked just fine because they had like an ally who would trade with them, like most countries have. But since the fall of the Soviet Union, they've been on the edge of starvation.
Like capitalism.
Yeah, they've been on the edge of starvation for about 30 years because of this. And the fact that that's not the central focus of any question about food by any Korean is terrifying to me. You know how many people's like, distant cousins or grandparents or whatever are stuck in North Korea, whether they have any politics or not, and are constantly on the edge of starvation because of this? Because like, it's a lot. It's almost everyone has someone up there. So yeah, that would be to me the take. If you want to talk about human rights and food, that's the take, I think.
Yeah, I think to Aiden's point, it's almost like people in South Korea are becoming myopic and insular.
Yeah, it's entirely possible.
They're thinking about their own problems, which are petty compared to global issues that we talk about a lot.
Well, yeah, that's everyone everywhere. Like you can't. Almost no one is thinking about global issues all the time. Even us, when we try to be worldly, we all devolve into our own things that occupy our lives. And yeah, that's how I took this. Is just like some like parent at a school board meeting, like writing an angry letter to the government, like public schools are feeding our kids things that make their tummies hurt. And
it was probably bullshit where the kid came home and lied about like getting fed spicy food instead of like getting knocked up or something. I don't know.
Like that.
Whatever goes on. In my mind, first, it's like some girl having,
it says young children.
I don't know. My point is, I was just like, daughter gives mom excuse that's fake. Mom takes seriously the excuse and then writes an op-ed about spicy food. To me, like, I just like the communication confusion.
There seems to be a common topic. You got fucking the ethical question about like should they eat octopi and stuff too. Like there seems to be a lot of food-based ethical issues in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Ethical issues everywhere.
Certainly working through some dietary stuff. That's for sure. Well, we'll never know what the actual truth of this headline is and the article behind it. But I had assumed it was kind of like a very mild culture war thing, or not even culture war, just like what's wrong, what's harming the kids these days. And so that's what's happening in Korea. And meanwhile, in America, this is what's happening here. This is how certain parts of the country are trying to protect the kids. From the Washington Post, I think we should throw those books in a fire. Movement builds on right to target books. You heard about this?
Yeah.
Right, as in the political right.
Yes, the political right.
Okay. Because I almost read it as like on the right to burn books. I was like, I think that's pretty guaranteed.
The picture was a giant picture of Greg Abbott, so I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, book burnings are on the rise, but what I find funny is that books are not even the primary way in which information is disseminated anymore. So what I imagine is in 10 years, when right-wingers are like, let's throw the computer on the fire.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, my emails. Like,
It's like the wrong...
This is
Burn
not
the
only
internet.
stupid, it's insanely antiquated. Like, it was
Is anyone,
antiquated in the
like-
40s when people were writing shit about, book burnings.
Are there any children reading books?
No, they're all on their iPad.
Like, Greg, I was going to say,
Only in school.
only where they have to, right? And
They're
even
not
then,
even
it's
reading in
probably
school. They've
digital.
all the fucking budgets have blown up to buy tech instead of actually good teachers.
Like we use it as virtue signaling often. I mean, like typically like liberal democratic, urban and suburban elites. But if you grew up in like a middle class background, chances are you prided yourself on something like reading a lot of books. But even divorcing it from that context, people when I was growing up 25 years ago, yeah, you read a good amount of books because the tech just wasn't there to do else with your time. Unless I wanted to run around with like a hoop on a stick, like you read books because they're a thing to do.
But it's also it was the best way to take in new information.
Yeah, like these days, I don't read nearly as much as I did because what reading I do is usually digital. It's usually on the internet or through an audiobook or through an e-reader, all these things. It's like you have so many options, most of which are now digitized. Are books even the most common way to consume text? No, I don't think so. Not anymore. This is kind of a weird... I think the obvious thing you're picking is like, look, the right is returning to like witch burning or like book burning, like any dystopian thing, but like the inefficacy is pretty weird.
You know what I think it is? They've forgotten how to protest. So whenever they see protests, they get mad because they think like protesting is now like what libs do, and they can't cancel stuff on the internet because that would make them hypocrites. Because their whole thing is about raving about not getting canceled on the internet. So all they have left is to resort to book burning, but it doesn't actually they think it's the only cultural touchstone they have. This is what my right winger grandfather did, and this is what his right wing grandfather did. Like, this is the only touch they have back to the old right wing cultures of like how to destroy information, because they have this weird guttural reaction to modern destruction of information through censorship or closing down websites or stuff like that.
Did you say this was...
They're kind of caught in like a time loop.
Did you say this was the Texas governor on the picture in?
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily mean he actually had anything to do with it.
No, but every time that we go back to like things that Texas is doing wrong, I have to kind of remind myself like this is the same state that's trying to do like a Hunger Games Coliseum for abortion doctors and the people who get their services. So like, yeah, I could see that. I could see them just doing like a huge book bonfire.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it's at this point maybe too low hanging fruit, but the constant like ignorance and hypocrisy is constantly astounding. Like, these are the same people who are calling like everything under the sun 1984, and now they're doing
exactly
451 in real life.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful, beautiful irony. Chef's kiss.
I mean, yeah, it's very gross. Obviously, this kind of is I'm sure that the visuals that this evokes are going to be pretty similar to that, like horsemen riding down Haitians. Like the visuals of burning books do not lend themselves well, because I'm sure you can compare it to like every dictatorship or like theocracy that's done exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny to me because not only is it ineffective, like it's both ineffective and horrible PR, which makes it's a Greg Abbott movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like his signature is incredibly stupid and self-destructive and harms others for no reason.
All right. Let's stay with American politics for a moment with a couple of paired articles. We'll start with one about the still a bit far off but looming presidential election of 2024. The candidates are already shaping up. on both sides of the party lines. And let's see who's on the docket. So first, from HuffPost, Howard Stern says he may run in 2024 if Trump does. I'll beat his ass.
In the Republican primary or in the general?
No, as a Democrat.
As a Democrat.
Okay.
He might be right.
Republican presidential hopeful soft launches 2024 campaign on premise that men are masturbating too much. From Slate.
So he had to stop masturbating to run for president to keep with his promise.
He's secretly not a family first guy, and he's masturbating all the time. Yeah, this is great. To me, this is like the Korean article. It's like, this is what is on the top of this guy's concern, whereas the Korean mom is worried about spicy food and human rights. I don't know, Republicans are insane if they think they can win on platforms like this anymore. They can't.
Who are they winning who they didn't already have on that platform?
Right.
Their platform could be, I have a giant R on my chest.
You really can't find a more like culture war bullshit issue to run on than like pornography is ruining in America. Like, sorry, it's not.
I talked to my scientist Joe Rogan. He told me NoFap November is good. So
right, exactly. Like we're literally going to see like NoFap 2024 signs if this guy gets that far.
Oh god,
murders would skyrocket.
Yeah. I would be responsible. That's insane.
I love it.
That you can just like that this is as you said, that this is what they're saying. This is what's important. That masturbation is ruining the nuclear family or whatever.
Well, if it's opposed by Howard Stern, then the other one will be like, you're not masturbating enough. Mandatory masturbation every day. You know.
Oh,
Howard Stern's requirement.
Yeah,
and he'll just have the porn star in the Sybian again, as he likes to do.
Yeah, I'm certainly not hopeful about Howard.
Oh, Howard, you crazy
presidency either. I don't need Beetlejuice as the vice president.
Now, regardless of how you feel about Howard Stern's sort of shock jock dipshit thing, I don't think he's going to win the Democratic primary when he got canceled for talking about black women with nappy-headed hose. Like, sorry, I don't think you can win the Democratic primary when that's what you're famous
but Alex, didn't you hear him criticize Aaron Rodgers?
No.
Yeah.
But he's dealt with depression, Alex. He's neurally
he's a rich guy having a mental health crisis.
Yeah, he's neurodivergent. Yeah.
He's certainly atypical.
I mean, he is funny. Gotta give him that.
Yeah, he's
successful.
Entertaining.
Yeah, he can be.
He's worth lots of money.
He's kind of he's the Jerry Springer of radio. Like, I mean, there's moments that are
no. Jerry Springer's even more like fake and phony.
I'm not saying he's morally equivalent. I think Springer's worse, but he plays to a certain sort of lowest common denominator of like shock and bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he's kind of like a Trump in that sense. I guess he's almost saying like I could be the Democratic Trump.
I want to see the Opie and Anthony presidential ticket.
Oh god.
I get Jim Norton for treasurer or something.
No, they actually have to both be president. It's the Opie. They can only do it as a show presidency.
Co-presidents.
Yeah, it goes back to like a Spartan dual kingship.
Yeah, except my joke is that they've been broken up for years.
Oh. Well, I'm not sure whether my subconscious knew that or not, but I still associate them together because of that.
Well,
and Louis can run HUD.
Yeah, Louis runs the Me Too campaigns that they have to reinvigorate to prove he's back.
I had Googled while
Chappelle runs HUD. We always have a black guy run it.
Yeah,
of course. I had Googled while we were talking because I was just curious if Howard Schultz had also announced another presidential run yet.
Peanuts.
Yes.
Someone like that, Joe.
Someone.
Who's Howard Schultz?
Oh, he's the ex-CEO of Starbucks. Who has tried to run for president before. Oh. And the first headline that comes up with his name is, this wasn't a headline I had prepared, but Starbucks ex-CEO Howard Schultz uses Holocaust analogy to discourage union vote.
Yeah.
He's actually perfect for the Democratic Party then.
Yeah, that's right. That's right along the messaging.
Wait, he's running as a Democrat?
he has in the past, I believe.
Yeah.
We just have to acknowledge that Joe Manchin's right. We're a right-wing country, therefore you can't ever try.
It's just like another Bloomberg, right? Yeah, a rich guy who wants to wants to have his name remembered and make more
Is it
money.
a crime if I say I want to hurt Joe Manchin?
No, but it could get you in trouble, so I wouldn't.
Just say in Minecraft.
Then I did. Then I didn't say it, and you can't prove it.
Thought crime.
You asked it as a question, which I think
That is correct.
You were concerned about our fans who might say things that they'd regret.
Folks, looking out for you.
Yeah. I mean, this is the fact that we're already basically assuming that Biden will be dead or in some sort of coma by 2024, and we need to figure out who would run instead is rather amusing. I'm sure he would like to run again, but probably will not be able to.
I hope he does.
I hope he doesn't, because I don't think he'll win unless it's Trump, because he's so just beaten down and exhausted. I think he would beat Trump again because of how fucking pathetic Trump is at this point. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is besides the fact that he sucks shit. I still hate Biden, but
It's too far out to even.
we're not gonna get we're not gonna get a good option. We already realized that from the Democratic Party.
No, we're in it for the memes.
Yeah. I want to get one of these insane crossovers. At what point do the log cabin Republicans just become the candidates for Democratic Party? Every time. That's where we're trending in my estimation.
Well, speaking of memes, you guys know that that meme format of the buff Shiba and the sad little Shiba dog next to each other. Well, I feel like our government. This is a pretty good example of our government being the little dog on the right, the pathetic one. As this is a headline from New York Times, the NIH says it isn't giving up in its patent fight with Moderna. So the NHS, National Institute of Health, basically by extension the U.S. government is.
Well, hang on. NHS is the UK's
NIH
health service, right? Yeah, you just said the NIH.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine.
Apologies. Is fighting with Moderna, the company, to prevent it from unilaterally owning the vaccine that it's created, the one that's been funded with tens of billions of taxpayer dollars and is reliant upon research from the NIH.
The one that has been 100% publicly funded by the United States.
Uh-huh.
Not a little bit, not partial, 100%.
No, they own
for all intents and purposes the U.S. public vaccine that we made with our money. I don't if this was a corporation, we would have 100% stock ownership. Logically, why would we have ever given this up?
What? Where does Moderna think get off trying this? You're going to lose to the U.S. government if they actually want to take it.
Well, that's the question.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they do. I think they're just doing trying to find a way to force them to give them more boosters or something. I don't think they give a shit about this, because otherwise they would never have given away the fucking patent to it in the first place. There was no reason to give them the patent. We just gave it away. We probably had a internal bidding war to see who would pay more for this patent. Because the Trump and Biden administrations are both corrupt as fuck. I'm sure one of them sold the rights to something that was enormously more expensive that would have been a public benefit to some private corporation. And I think they may even have to reveal that. I just don't remember it offhand. But yeah,
I'm way out of my depth.
It's completely insane that we would have ever given up the patent to this as a public. If we had a actual vote, if the American public got to say, should we sell the rights to a life-saving medical breakthrough to a private company for profit instead of just owning it with the money we spent on it? No, I don't think.
I don't know, Alex. I don't know if you want to trust the American public with a vote on that. That's what the UK thought they were doing when they tried the Brexit vote. The American public, yeah, fuck yeah, we get to sell that because they're idiots, and they think that we'd somehow profit from selling it to other countries.
If it was explained in a non-pushy way, then people would absolutely not be okay with that.
Yeah, but that's just
as dumb as they are. Even a relatively sort of ignorant American who loves capitalism could realize, if we bought it, then we should keep it, because that's what we did. We spent public money on this thing. That's the entire way it was funded. It was made in American institutions, and we don't get to keep the right to it.
Here's what they'd say. They would say, then take the Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson. They're idiots.
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't even address the question.
Of course not. Because questions are not for addressing.
I mean, we're shadowboxing with an imagined American public here, but I'm pretty sure most people understand the concept of when you pay for something, you own it. The American public completely paid for this vaccine. The fact that they even get to call it the Moderna vaccine as opposed to the U.S. public vaccine is already repugnant to me. It's like the Trump putting his name on the check thing. It's really gross.
That's my point, that America does not view the way our tax dollars are spent as our ownership. We instead of taking pride in paying taxes so that you feel like you have a public stake in the country, people resent taxes and think taxes are the government, which is somehow not controlled by them, stealing money from them. Because Americans have a fundamentally warped view of what the government is.
I don't know. Have you ever seen like a really entitled Karen like shouting at some mailman like, "I pay your taxes. You know, my taxes pay your salary." Like,
but they only say that out of rage. They don't actually take those implications of that seriously.
Yeah.
Hey, if we yell at more Moderna executives, that's enough for me.
Honestly. All right, this is a message to all the Karens out there. Go yell at Moderna. You're not usually good people, but you can help us now.
We can leverage their power.
Yeah.
By the power of a mighty wave of Karens, like millions upon millions of you are in the United States. You're probably the country with the most. Go fuck with Moderna. Like, go swamp their phone calls. Go like yell at their executives. Like make their life hell, just like they're making life hell in the global south by not making sure they have any vaccine.
Also, something Moderna specifically has been very bulldogish about. Well, I know why I said NHS, because I have the UK on the brain, because this was also paired with another
UK on the brain is very dangerous.
Yeah, it really is. So many English breakfasts rolling around in my head.
So many English Brexits.
Spilling my beans. All the jokes. Seems like okay. Make sure you guys are firmly in your seats, but
I'm strapped in.
Turns out money also influences politics over there.
You're lying.
MPs must be paid more to prevent lobbying scandals, says Tory MP.
Now, I laugh, but this literally is the last amendment to the American Constitution, which was to pay people in government more so that they are less susceptible to bribes.
And wow, did that work?
Well, this is... Once again, this is like that thing you posted, which is the person you hate the most finally says something that's correct, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
Because by having well-paid public officials, it reduces the reliance on private money, so poorer, regular people can afford to become politicians.
Now, I think that used to be true, but I think there's been an acceleration. I think people are so insanely greedy now. You know, because the only people we like anymore are billionaires, now there is no amount of money you could pay to public officials that would prevent them from still getting corrupt and bribed.
No, you're not.
Everyone wants to be insanely rich.
You're not following my point there. I'm not talking about stopping corruption. That's going to happen no matter what. My point that I was referencing was that
just to lower the barrier of entry.
Poor people who want to become politicians generally cannot, not only because of the resources to even win their initial campaign, which is less of a problem in the UK where they don't have as elaborate a run-up. But the real issue is that like they may not have enough money to support their family because in a lot of cases, politicians are not paid very well.
But as you just said, the game's already up because the initial money you need is not while you're governing, it's to campaign.
Well, that's in the United States. The UK has much tighter election regulations about when you can spend money and how you can spend it and how you get public funding for it. So they actually have that much better figured out than we do.
Yeah, but government officials are still well paid and have lots of other security, have insurance. Like getting a government job is actually a very effective thing to do in pretty much any Western country.
I guess what I'm saying is for anyone who thinks like, hey, you know, the U.S. president gets like $400,000 a year or whatever, like they're so rich. It's like, well, anyone who could become U.S. president could have made 100 times that doing something else.
No, but some yokel who became president is fine with $400,000 a year.
Exactly, which is why it's good. Like you want it to be well financially compensated for doing a public service. If you're someone who has good politics and you want to run for office, you should never be like, I can't afford to do that. It is very funny watching a headline that's like right-wing crank government official who's probably already on the take from 6 different groups wants more money from the public fund. Like in this particular instance, he's almost certainly just being a selfish asshole. But generally speaking, most people don't really understand the reason why it's good to maintain a well-paid bureaucracy or a well-paid like political class, and it's to make sure that the rich don't just own it with their own bribery. Which is that's actually how it works.
I mean, I think the barrier to entry, the accessibility argument is a good one, but the unfortunate truth is that no amount of reasonable salary can ever compete with the intensive lobbying efforts of
right. Like the problem is the numbers are never going to line up unless people are getting paid $30 million a year like they're sports stars. The dark money will always win.
But if means is not as much an issue to becoming a politician, we might just happen to fall into more ethical, moral politicians, which would be nice. But
well, you can also prevent the other thing by saying like, oh, it's a felony.
Well, yeah, of course.
Any kind of campaign contribution over like $10, and we will actually put you in prison and prevent you from ever running for office.
That will never be.
If we enforced an actual regime in either the U.S. or the UK that was like, hey, severe punishment to the point of you lose your whole career for taking that kind of cash, well, people might think twice.
But that never could happen. That never could be enforced. It would never be allowed to be enforced.
It couldn't happen so long as the decision about whether it happens is left to a corrupt political class.
Of course.
But if there was like a sweeping referendum type election.
In a veil of ignorance, it could happen, but that's not the world we live in. We have to deal with practical politics.
If there was, for any reason, for any combination of factors, of which history has shown plenty, a meaningfully, even just like liberal in the American sense, like center sort of sweeps to power on a reforming, progressive kind of premise, I could absolutely see there being like we will never allow campaign contributions again. All that shit's over. Like that to me is not as extreme as any of like the Roosevelt reforms, and he was able to get shit done. So I think that with the right candidates in the right positions, we could absolutely see that forced through. Right now, absolutely not. We can't even get like infrastructure done. But theoretically, that's something that should be pretty high on our priority.
We can't even get Republican legislation passed.
Yeah. Right now. The point is, if you want to actually make political change, it's not just like voting D, it's making sure that the people who get in office have the actual plans to do something like preventing, basically dark money or open bribery from affecting your political process. This is kind of like a reformist, like lib issue, but it's still true. Like it's still a huge problem. And I think you can get a lot of people who don't even think of themselves as like leftists on board with saying, get the fucking money out of politics. And that would definitely help. It would definitely help if people didn't feel like, oh, I'm more beholden to Moderna than I am to the American public.
Yeah, and I think recent examples like Cinema and Mansion being so blatant about how beholden they are to corporate interests has stoked a greater general ire among political bases than we've seen in recent history. I don't think that will lead to any kind of immediate systemic change like we're hoping for and discussing, but I think it does show that there is some momentum to be harnessed there, that people aren't entirely complacent to the natural disgust they should feel at such displays, which is some hope there.
And it's also, I mean, we're swamped with it because it's been our whole lives and it's horrible, but like it wasn't really that much of American history where this was the big issue. Like the robber baron era, they weren't even spending that much money on politics. Like they didn't think they had to. They just assumed that the political class was always going to be their allies.
Which is the reason the spending is this high currently, is because the capital feels they need this to.
Oh yeah, because they feel threatened because they realize that they're creating horrible living conditions and people are going to rise up otherwise. They have to keep them confused and docile and manipulated. So like what we're seeing is an extreme reaction by the enemy, so to speak, because they know that it's necessary, because they know that they're playing a dangerous game in the first place. So yeah, I think that even from just like a centrist, lib, reformist perspective, this is an easy issue because very few people sit down at the dinner table. It's like, yes, the politicians are underpaid and they need more bribe money. Like almost no one believes that. Even the right wing has like conspiracy theories about how the politicians are all on the take. So yeah, I think the vast majority of Americans, if we could rally around that, would love to see the political class severed from that dark money and back to being like they were more than 50 years ago, and pretty much the rest of U.S. history. I mean, this is decay, but it's the same problem here, of if not worse. Get the fucking corporate money out of politics so politicians aren't beholden to them so much. Yeah, that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I think I said that we were going to do a couple sets of paired articles, but I changed my mind because we're talking about money, and so let's go to money, and also to the once again the root ethos of misleadingly phrased headlines. From CNBC, U.S. consumer prices jumped 6.2% in October, the biggest inflation surge in more than 30 years. So there are there are a number of things to talk about in terms of the intentional messaging, why this is making news. But first, I just want to point out that this is so misleading as to be basically a lie, in that what they're actually saying, just because I'd read other articles on this subject, is that it's a 6.2% increase from last October to this October.
Oh, so this is a lie, right? It makes it sound like it jumped in 1 month, which is literally how it's phrased. Yeah. So this is a lie.
Mm-hmm.
You love to see it,
but even the premise is false. Just because people raise prices doesn't mean inflation's actually happening.
No, if anything, inflation is like a separate overlapping problem with this problem.
These are not even related.
So there's two different things at play here for those who don't follow like economics.
Inflation's about money in the system.
I barely do either. Like I'm not going to explain this perfectly, but the basic premise here is one of the things they could be talking about, and what it sounds like they're talking about, is the value of the U.S. wage versus the cost of consumer goods. So like, how much are you paid at your job versus how much it costs to, pay rent or buy groceries. The second question is, what is the value of the dollar in an abstract sense relative to both other currencies and itself from a previous period of time? So like, how much could your dollar buy you today versus last October, whatever the fuck they're talking about? Yeah. So in other words, those are related issues, but they're not the same issue. In fact, they can directly affect each other. And it's not even clear from this headline exactly which one they're talking about, because they say inflation, but the first thing describes the purchasing power of like a worker's income versus the price of goods. So I don't really know, which are not directly related, because inflation can have other effects like changing how much the value of your debt is.
Yeah, I want to correct myself. Technically, this is inflation, because inflation is by definition how much your dollar buys. So yes, prices go up means your dollar buys less, but they're acting like the cause is somehow someone is held responsible for this.
But just so people understand the distinction between these two ideas, in case it wasn't clear yet, the inflation since like 1970 has been what, 200 or 300%, 400%, whereas the rise in the cost of attending college has been like 2,000%. So in that case, a consumer price, the cost of attending college, has massively gone up relative to even inflation.
And you wouldn't call that the college price go up inflation.
Right. Those are two different ideas that are certainly related, but they're not the same idea. And this article says like half of the sentence is about one and half the sentence is about the other, which is really weird and confusing. Probably intentionally, though. It's
CNBC. They're in the business of obfuscating how money works.
Yeah, I mean, I think they almost certainly phrased the first half as U.S. consumer prices to try to make people feel like this is a pressing issue, because they're consumers and the prices affect them in a direct way that they see every day. But yeah, I saw a lot of headlines about inflation when I was trolling through news.
It was probably just a response to the infrastructure bill. They just want to pretend that the government spending all this money will lead to inflation, so don't do it. That's my guess.
Yeah, and also, as Alex briefly touched on, the fact that inflation is bad for very wealthy debt holders, because it devalues the debt that they own.
Yeah, well, that's actually what I was going to get to. One of these helps the left, one of these helps the right.
Yeah,
right. Like purchasing power of workers relative to goods is a workers' issue, because paying 80% of your income on rent instead of 20%, over the last 50 years, as the price of rent has skyrocketed due to financial speculation of the housing market. That's a huge problem for working people, because they can barely afford to even have a roof over their head. However, by contrast, if you have a huge spike in inflation, all of the debts that people have become less meaningful, because the debt they owe is worth a smaller share of money. So, for instance, in the late 19th century, the populists were literally running on a "let's make more inflation happen" ticket, because they thought it would help the farmers who owed a lot of debt to Eastern bank interests and capitalists. So inflation, generally speaking, harms wealthy people because it devalues the value of all their money.
Except there's different kinds of like there can be asset inflation that's separate from.
Well, I'm still just talking about the concept of literally the dollar's inflation. It doesn't always help. Like definitely, extreme inflation hurts everyone, but modest inflation, if anything, is good for working class people because they're the ones saddled with debts. So these are two different framings, one of which is about workers and the other which is about owners, and they're being wedged together, presumably to make workers think they care about the things that actually help owners. Consumer prices being higher than wages comparatively over time is very bad for working people. Inflation in a moderate amount over time is almost always good for working people. So this is an intentionally manipulative framing.
Yeah, and it's a solution to make inflation less concerning to the working class. Raise their wages, like you should be doing anyway, is to keep up with inflation. But I could hazard a guess that CNBC is not with the same kind of persuasive, misleading framing, documenting the current struggles of strikers working for such ends. But that's just a guess. They could surprise me, right?
No.
Yep, that's the answer. You get 100 points. Moving on.
Okay.
So the COP26, the UN Climate Change Conference, is this week, and I found a couple articles from there, and I'm curious about your guys' takes on them because I think that they are definitely the headlines are written in a way that could suggest some pretty pernicious messaging, but I think there also are some genuine concerns and valuable discussions that could be had off of them. So I'm curious if you see it the same way or if it's just kind of the negative and I'm being too optimistic. But this is what the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal has decided to write off of the topic of climate change progress. The first from the New York Times is, here's how Mexico can clean up its dirty energy industry. And
just saying it.
The second one is
their illegal immigrant energy
from Wall Street
Journal.
Yep.
Holy shit.
South Africa can't afford to quit coal. Will rich countries pay for their transition?
Oh man, that is fascinating.
South Africa is pre-op.
Right. They're framing it like they're fucking trans. What the fuck? Holy shit, Wall Street Journal is evil genius.
Are they, or is that just our fucked up brains?
No.
Because transition's still a word that exists.
No, but this is like saying pay for the abortion. This is absolutely loaded language.
It's a weird word
It is
choice.
weird, I agree.
I mean, saying we have fucked up word associations goes without saying, but I think that in this case it's a more generalizable.
Yeah. So thoughts?
This is, remember, like literally in our very first episode, it's like Xi Jinping's dirty coal has tainted America. It's very, very common to shit on other countries because it's like, look, they're not using as efficient power setup usually. Therefore, like us good, responsible polluters in the United States who only use, 10 times as much water or 100 times as much water as they do and, put out more pollution per person than almost anything in the world.
Singular bureaus outclass entire countries.
We're the good ones. When we pollute, which we do more than anyone else, it's good pollution. Theirs is dirty coal.
We put out freedom vapor.
Yeah. This really has more in common with the French fry versus freedom fry. Like anything we do, even if it's identical technology, we pretend it's good. And anything that other people do who we don't like, even if it's the same thing we do, we pretend it's bad. It's like, this is so childish. Oh,
yeah.
Trump and Biden were both running on let's reopen coal.
Let's renegotiate with Canada and Mexico for energy.
They were both in Appalachia, glad-handing miserable people who were all been unemployed for 20 years. We're gonna reopen the coal mines, Jack. That was a campaign promise for both sides.
We're gonna make sure some of your friends get the black lung.
Yeah. Who is this American group that doesn't like dirty energy? We built the pipeline. We're exploiting every natural resource we can. We're fracking. We're starting coal up again. What? Since when did we stop? I don't know. These are both U.S. papers. That's the reason I say it, because it's like it's the contrast is obviously versus the West, but it's like America's like the dirtiest fucking country of any of them.
It's a dirty dog.
Also, South Africa is relatively rich compared to other African nations and neighbors.
Yeah.
So they can fuck off about that part. Like, how about we all quit? How about we all transition to green energy?
Well,
holy Christ, it's not that complicated.
Well, that's the thing.
Why do South American countries make drugs? To sell to America. Why do South American countries use dirty energy? To give to America, you fucking dipshits. Oh my God.
Can America kick Afghanistan's opium addiction? It's like
right, and make it like,
no,
stop consuming.
You've willed
I'm like turning into the Hulk right now.
You willed that headline into existence, Alex.
Yeah, it basically has already happened.
Oh, I just want to rephrase. Only the second one is actually one that I thought might actually have a valuable kernel to it, and that's just that. Yeah, if we want a global movement towards clean energy, we have to think about the ways in which we can subsidize it for countries that can't afford the kind of upfront cost of transitioning from whatever energy they're using to clean energy.
This is also a loaded way to smuggle in a whole lot of other bullshit. You know, we always make well, they're a developing country, so they're farther behind. South Africa. Well, we know what happened there. Like, this is a way to kind of throw this onto Mandela. It's a way to say, like, well, it's apartheid's fault why they're behind. Like, this is so gross. The way in which American papers pretend that they do foreign policy is fucked up.
I also point out, like, I'm as green as the next leftist, but South Africa has like 40% unemployment right now. There's some issues that are a little more pressing there than whether they quit coal. Like they're having like gang shootings in major cities
for every
day for basically basic sustenance. Like the country's falling apart. They're barely on the level of a functioning state. They're starting to become a failed state, and in not just like our jokey like a state sucks, but like in a clinical academic sense, they're on the edge of becoming a failed state.
And as I was saying before, all the people with money there are fleeing.
Yeah, I don't think that their concern right now is like, what's our carbon output? Their concern is, can we retain power as a state, as opposed to, non-state actors that are essentially like terror groups. I don't think their concern is coal. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but exactly, and it's just this is, as I think Jason has already said, and you have basically just said, this is just an easy way to point the finger while not offering a helping hand in any way, even if South Africa does or does not need a helping hand. Like the thing to do might be like, hey, yeah, we see your country is going through a traumatic division and degradation.
It's a Clippy pop-up.
How about we help you create a expansive jobs program that somehow ties into a clean energy initiative? That would solve both problems to some extent. And it's just Wall Street Journal goes brr, which I think I say I go brr every episode.
Yeah, you really like that one.
I do.
I think the fact you paired it with the Mexico one's almost exactly right, which is like, let's take a poorer southern country and say, here's what you're fucking up. And it's like, America just kind of enjoys pointing to other people's problems because then we're not looking at our problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mexico also has plenty of things to worry about that are probably more pressing in the immediate sense for them than whether or not they're using coal or whatever the fuck they're accusing them of. But again, this is not to say that the world should not reduce carbon output. Obviously, it needs to as fast as possible. But that has to be led by the biggest polluters, which is the U.S. and other industrialized countries. I have to stress, the countries with the biggest populations, like India and China and whatnot, are not the world's biggest polluters. It's Western countries, because it basically has to do with how industrialized your country is. And a heavily industrialized country with a large, affluent consumer population, relatively speaking, they're absolutely the biggest polluters, per capita at the very least. Kind of mid-tier of like they're doing some pollution, but not as bad as us. But we always start with like the lowest possible easy targets, because it's like, what are they going to do? Complain? South Africa can't really do anything to the U.S. Mexico can't really stop the U.S. I mean, we spent 4 years saying like Mexicans are rapists and we need to build a wall because of how gross you are. And Mexico's just like, please stop. Please stop doing this. Like, what are they going to do? The U.S. is the juggernaut of the world. So They just kind of have to suffer our abuse, both literally and metaphorically, as we deflect our own problems onto them.
And they're lucky to have our scorn. It's probably the next op-ed coming from the New York Times. But in another seamless transition, we're not the only ones feeling extreme outrage. Writers at Slate also are. The Supreme Court's latest gun case made a mockery of originalism.
Originalism?
Oh, God. Every time we do a court one now, I start depressed.
Yeah, we have to have a there's a joke here. We have to put a what do they call it? When you like pause a case.
A temporary stay.
Yeah, we have to put a stay on court case story.
Or at least just keep this amicus brief.
Yeah, there it is. That was better.
There, as we discussed pre-episode, there are a lot of court articles that would have made you all a lot more depressed.
These episodes.
Oh, I'm sure.
These episodes are full of court packing.
It's just the Supreme Court is so fucked. Like remember when it was like a 5-4 court for most of history, and everyone was like, "Can we get the swing person to?" It's 6-3. It's fucked. It can't be won.
And I was like, "Please, madam, may I have a vaguely liberal ruling?"
Yeah, can someone seduce Amy Coney Barrett and make her into a liberal? No. Stop. It's not going to happen.
Stop trying to make it a thing.
Jesus.
They're
right. Still trying.
So obviously I chose this because originalism, at least I think, is complete trash to begin with. So
oh yeah.
Who the fuck? How the fuck do you make a mockery of it? So let's just speed run this depression deadline. I also included hold
on.
No.
I don't think average people know what that is. So for people who aren't like nerds, originalism in the Supreme Court context means doing what they claim is what the founding fathers would have wanted regarding a law. So
not, adapting to time.
What would Thomas Jefferson have thought about child porn on the internet? They're trying to extrapolate like their D&D headcanon about the founding fathers to interpret their whim 250 years later to figure out how we need to resolve problems in the 21st century. So if my scornful description did not make it clear, it's asinine. Because there's no way to know. There's no way to know. They're just making shit up. They're just having fun, like role-playing George Washington.
I put something useful in the chat. This is a definition for faux originalism, and I will read it. Noun, a legal philosophy for answering questions about the Constitution's meaning that purports to be restrained by the original understanding of the Constitution's words, but that enables its adherents to elevate their own views by selectively following only some of the Constitution rather than the text, history, and values of the whole Constitution, or by otherwise distorting the Constitution's meaning. So basically, it's someone gets to pretend that what they believe is what Jefferson believed, right, and they just say that.
Yeah, and I did read this, and it's funny because that's basically what this person complains about, is that's what conservative justices are doing, as if there's a much purer, more reliable version of.
Well, yeah, because there's two takes of this, right? There's the left take, which is that they're all hack frauds, that every single one of them is just pushing their own bullshit interests.
They are all hack frauds.
And then there's the centrist take, which is like the Republicans do this. The nice, good Democratic justices never bend the law to their preference.
We just talked about how bad RBG was.
Yeah.
Like, she did this to a fucking T.
Right, but she's run RBG. She's like an untouchable god in the view of the average person.
You know what I'm doing? I'm bashing her in this episode too.
Oh no,
RBG.
Yeah, unfortunately, the sort of cult of the American state is extremely hot right now because the sort of lib resistance crowd thought it was the way to beat Trump. So there was a huge resurgence in like people's perception in that group of like the value of the FBI and the CIA, of the utility of the Supreme Court, of the value of like deep state institutions. Basically just saying like, we need to rely on these institutions to protect us from the bad Trump who's the deviation. But the reality is the institutions have sucked since almost the founding of the country. And that's the reason why we get things like Trump, is because they suck and they didn't prevent it. Because they were not particularly well put together in the first place. So all of this lib love for institutions like the Supreme Court, it's like, I bet you wish you didn't do that, huh? Now that it's completely stacked by far right radicals. But also, it's too late. That's their whole ideology.
As a culture, pretty much everyone has come around to acknowledging that the founders were dumb, racist, elite psychos, deranged. Like, why do we want what they envisioned for America? How about what we want for America? Holy shit. Why are we beholden to these corpses?
Well, I like that. I like that phrase.
The top 10 richest founding fathers who are dead.
Yeah. It's our world. We get to make it what we want. We don't need to do things for dead people. They're dead.
I mean, the U.S. Constitution is foundationally conservative in its premise, which is future generations are going to be very heavily restricted and bound by the preferences of a small male white landholding slave group of people. Like the founding fathers are some of the least representative of the U.S. public in 2021.
Even then, they provided at least some caveat by giving mechanisms by which you can change and adapt it. And even then, we don't take advantage of it.
Right.
Ah, fuck.
So the Constitution is not a particularly democratic document, as we discussed in previous episodes. Only really the House of Representatives follows a normal democratic procedure. Almost everything else is stacked for the rich and the elites by design, because they didn't trust the public and they didn't trust democracy. So they only gave it the sort of third minoritarian position in this scheme. So to overhype the value and importance of the U.S. Constitution is a sort of fetish that has been confusedly adopted by even the center of our politics, even though it does not serve the interests of most people to do that. The entire premise of the Supreme Court is to interpret the will of long dead assholes to determine problems they could never have understood, and which, even if they did understand, they would have bad takes on. We're basically letting like the oldest grandpas on Twitter, who are also deceased, determine whether or not we can have like healthcare.
What would George Washington think of net neutrality? Shut the fuck up.
Right? Who cares?
Move forward. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And just a note to highlight another term that you can pick up on, listeners, if you're not already aware. Textualism is basically the same thing when people use it. So
yep.
Also just keep all this in mind if you see that in any writing. Or
textualism is sort of like originalism, except they want to claim that it's just from the text as opposed to from interpreting the spirits.
Yeah. And like a lot of the early cases.
You want to make it clear that you're literate too.
Yeah, it's like saying, "Oh, I'm not." It's not just about what they thought. It's also about really just read a deep textual reading of the documents. Yeah,
it's like people who think numerology is in the Bible. I mean, fuck off.
This is the cult of the American state, and the reason why people love it is because, as Jason mentioned with like the faux originalism, it's a form of obscurantism that allows them to do evil things under the pretext of legitimacy. So when you say like, "I want to make a horrible evil policy," and I'm not even a lawmaking body, I'm a fucking court, but I'm going to somehow get away with that and say that it was all like neutral because I just read the text. Right? It's just a very obvious way of veiling what you're doing behind this claim of legal authority. But when you like restrict women's abortion rights or sentence people to die, you're doing an evil thing. It doesn't really matter whether you're hiding behind the text, but it's very important to a lot of centrists that you're hiding behind the text when you do evil. And at the end of the day, like, this is why centrists are not helpful, like, because they're okay with evil as long as the process was followed. And it's not. It's still evil. Like, stop. But they don't. They really love when you're like, hey, there's nothing we could have done. The text said we had to, sterilize gay people or
all the instructions to a T.
Yeah.
So I think we've reached the correct conclusion based off this headline, but this line towards the end of the article did catch my eye. And I'm just going to read it out now as I post it in chat. There is nothing inherently wrong with Republicans and their Federalist Society groomed justices supersizing the Second Amendment. The left got its supersized rights in the 1960s.
Oh my god.
Now it's the right's turn.
What are you fucking talking about?
Oh my god.
Civil rights was supersizing the First Amendment?
This person is comparing the Civil and Voting Rights Acts of the 60s. I couldn't believe it.
The Second Amendment is about a militia. Shut the fuck up. It's already been supersized from the get-go.
Yeah, remember when black people got their big gulp of amendments in the 1960s?
Oh my god!
What the fuck is this language?
Who wrote this? I was trying to calm down. I was doing like Serenity Now in my head, but Jesus Christ!
6-3 Republican Supreme Court. I'm loving it.
I'm glad you guys reacted the same way because this blew me away.
This is just whataboutism from Slate.
You remember how when good people get something, evil people have to get something to be fair?
Like this is like Saruman.
Yeah,
It's like it's not fair. They made a fellowship.
yeah. Rohan got to farm for a lot of years. Why can't the orcs eat them alive?
What the fuck?
Yeah, this person.
It's the Uruk's turn.
This American citizen, descended from people that we ripped from their homes and brought across the sea, is now considered slightly more human. So how about these people get whatever gun they want hidden down their jorts or whatever?
Is this an article written by RBG? Because that's what it feels.
Holy Christ!
It's her last will and testament.
Her last will and testament. Fuck you, black people. You're not grateful enough. Yeah. So this is the disdain that most actual people in positions of power, especially talking about the court, feel for the American public. But like when they actually get like a trivial thing that they should have had in the first place, like basic human rights and not being lynched, that's a supersized gulp of rights instead of just the thing they should have started from.
It's not just disdain. It's total disillusionment and delusion from understanding what these factional interests are. This is not the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists arguing about little factional. This is not John Jay and fucking John Adams making little arguments about what. Oh well, this little group and they'll fight for this thing and they'll fight for that thing. We're talking about human rights.
Yeah, all they were talking about was like, does John Adams have the right to call Thomas Jefferson's mother a cunt? Like that's what they covered at that time.
God,
it is false equivalency to a degree that sent me into space.
How come the 3rd through 27th Amendments never get brought up? How come it's only ever the first and second ones?
Boring, lame.
Oh shit!
Because most people can't read more than 2 lines of the Constitution before giving up, even though it's like the easiest document we could possibly have. It's so fucking short and obvious when it does.
Literally, it's a constitutional convention. All the big brain founders came together and said, all right, we're going to write this document so simple that even little brain plebs will be able to understand it.
Like if you have some trouble digesting, you could probably finish the Constitution while you're just on the toilet. Like the amount of time it takes to actually read the American Constitution is fuck all. I suggest everyone do it just that you know how fucking garbage it is.
Everyone has a pocket constitution that you get from fucking school.
Just read it.
Tiny, it's so simple.
But most people don't know it, so they don't know. They after like 2 amendments, they're like, this is boring.
Also, fuck the amendments. Read the actual Constitution part.
Well, yeah,
that shit matters a lot.
But the other part of this insane line, which is probably one of the most insane things you post, which I guess is fair because it's not a headline, so they could give some detail. They're implying that the left and the right are almost like people. It's like, hey, he got what he needed. Now now it's my turn to get a slice of pizza. This is like an
unhappy marriage. We're like, well, the wife got dish duty 1 day less, so why doesn't the dad get like a better another football Sunday?
When you extrapolate what they're talking about, saying, well, black people got basic civil and human rights to some degree in the 60s, so now it's time for women to lose access to abortion. What? Those aren't even related premises. Like let's assume that the Supreme Court tries to get rid of Roe v. Wade, which is obviously what they've been building towards for decades. That has nothing to do with whether black people got civil rights. It's literally just fucking over a different group of vulnerable people, which is to say women. I mean, women's civil rights have not really been improved very much since like the 19-teens when suffrage was enacted.
20s, yeah.
Other than Roe v. Wade itself, they didn't get a lot recently. So if they undo Roe v. Wade, they're undoing the one big gulp they supposedly got then. What?
Yeah, let's.
Every part of this is madness. Like, it's evil. It's stupid. It's incoherent.
I just got crit. I mean, oh my god.
Yeah. This is real bad.
Maximum damage.
I guarantee you, this person thinks they're like a lib.
No, they think they're neutral. They think they're above it all.
That's what I mean. Like that they're like an enlightened centrist. But this is
surprised if Hillary Clinton wrote this.
This is the problem more than almost anything else with centrism. Saying we need the orcs to get equal rights as the people, like we need evil to have an equal number of victories as good, is completely insane for very obvious reasons.
You know how literally all fiction is about good overcoming evil? Apparently not in reality, because apparently evil needs to have 50% airtime, and evil needs fairer representatives for them.
Doing the right thing has been doing too well recently. We have to do more evil.
Politics is not about people. It's a game. We're keeping
score. And for all those who are like, oh, you guys just hate Republicans. Democrats are also evil. But you know what's not evil? Human rights.
Yeah. Well, most Democrats and most Republicans, there's always a few exceptions, but the reality of this like position that they're taking is they don't have a politics. Like they're not saying here's what should be done. They're saying, okay, now children on the
Here's
left
what
and the
is.
right, you have to play together in this playground. So, all right, if you want to have basic human rights, then they have to cancel some human rights. That's just how it works. Play nice, kids. It's this patronizing horseshit as if they're like the mom who's telling their kids to get along, even though one of those kids is like trying to shiv the other one in the throat.
Right, but exactly. But what you're talking about with this is why it's not a good equivalency that Aiden was saying. What they're acting like is Timmy and Jimmy aren't sharing, but those aren't the stakes of actual politics. The stakes are, as you just said, Timmy wants to murder Jimmy, and Jimmy wants to play with a fire truck.
I mean, in the next Republican administration, when the Supreme Court rules that like trans people can be hunted for sport, I don't think it's going to help them to say like the '60s were pretty good, though, right?
Well, this is just like the Skullduggery podcast where they had met and not Felix, Tex, I can't remember his name. Like the stakes aren't. It's not. Well, they're just little disputes. No, it's I don't want toxic sewage on me, and the corporation say I want to dump toxic sewage on you. These are not equivalent moral claims. God, this is so upsetting. This is so upsetting that people think this way.
It's the trolley car where they're like, okay, we have to send the trolley car down both tracks. Like
we did one track, and now we have to do the other. To be fair,
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be right if we only killed one person, so we have to kill 6 people. It's maximally stupid because it's not only evil, it doesn't even it's not even productive evil. It's not like, okay, here's why we need to do this. It's an idiotic devotion to the premise of finding the midpoint between two positions, no matter how evil they are. So you have to compromise with Hitler, kill half the Jews. That's the enlightened centrist position on the Holocaust. Like I don't know what else to say. It is so asinine and so morally bankrupt that the people who hold this, like sniffing their own farts and saying that like they found the third way, honestly, are some of the most despicable people in the country. Maybe even worse than Republicans.
That's a good analogy, Alex. I'm gonna rewrite that sentence in the context you just gave it.
Yeah,
there is nothing inherently wrong with Nazis and their Nazi doctors. Their Nazi doctor groomed justices supersizing, the power of their military. The Jews got its supersized rights in the 40s.
Right.
So it's now the right's turn. Shut the fuck up.
It makes no sense. If you extrapolate to any issue of moral clarity, you would go, oh, that's horrific. Good got too much, so evil needs to win now?
I don't know if Aiden's going to bring it up, the Paul Gosar tweet. But for those who don't know, Paul Gosar is one of these psycho Republicans in the House. He recently tweeted an edited clip of Attack on Titan where he's the main character and he's killing AOC, who's a Titan. It's one of the most disgusting and insane things ever done by someone in Congress. Most people are just calling for him to be fired, but some people are calling for him to be arrested, and I agree with them.
Sorry, I missed it. What was the thing he did?
He tweeted, remember when Trump tweeted the gif of him doing wrestling on CNN?
Yeah.
Paul Gosar tweeted. Paul Gosar, by the way, has like 8 siblings who all campaigned against him for his opponent.
Oh, it's that guy.
Yeah. So he tweeted an image, a clip from Attack on Titan, which is an openly fascist anime, by the way, for people who are not sure. The big twist is that Attack on Titan's fascist. But
Weird.
He tweeted an image where he's the guy with the swords and the cool flying trap, like acrobatic stuff, killing a Titan version of AOC. Who by the way, the Titans are mind wiped, essentially Jews who were turned into mindless killing machines.
All right, well now I understand why I was deeply disturbed by even the brief amount of that I watched.
But the reason I bring it up is because he's like, oh, it's just symbolic. There's no moral stakes here. This isn't the serious incitement. What this guy just wrote in his last sentence is an incitement of violence. Oh, the right wing gets to get more access to guns to kill people with because the left got stuff. Fuck off. You're an evil person.
Homeowners have had it too good. I think it's time for them to become homeless. It's their turn to be homeless.
Fuck?
Take any issue and extrapolate this logic, and you go, what is wrong with this person? And it's wrong because their brain is dead. Because their vision of the world is just find midpoints between things and say that's the solution.
This is like, all right, we're actually going to cut the baby in half. Like, did you not understand the moral of the story?
Well, the right wing wants everyone to die of COVID. The left wing wants the whole world to be vaccinated. The enlightened centrist position, just vaccinate the West, and that's what we did. It's literally what we always do.
But voluntarily.
We vaccinate the West and we let the global South suffer and die, and then eventually cook up new versions of the disease that fuck us anyway, because that's the centrist position.
But only as much of the West as they want.
Yeah.
And not the people who actually want it in the rest of the world.
The fact that the sort of centrist position is always like this haughty, we're the smartest people in the room, when it's actually one of the most like insanely ineffective and evil things you could do, is what I think makes it the most repugnant.
God.
Republicans are just like, hi, I'm a clown, I'm evil. It's like, well, yeah. Own it. If you're a centrist, you're evil. Own it. Deal with it. Say what you are, because this is nuts.
So, I will.
Oh, sorry. I should mention American centrist, which basically means far right to everyone else.
Yes, of course.
If you're a centrist in Europe, you're probably fine.
It is important to reiterate fairly regularly.
If you're centrist in Europe, you just want like capitalism regulated.
If you're centrist in Europe, you're Bernie Sanders. So, like, I mean, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like social democrats.
Yes, keep in mind. Yes, we talk about global politics, but when we are channeling our ire in a Godzilla-like nuclear beam, we're pretty much talking about American politics as it stands.
Yeah, that's what we're referring to. I don't have any problem with like social democracy.
I just have some, but it's.
So I'm going to phrase this next bit so that I cannot be held culpable for any further misery. Right. I'll let you choose your own poison. Pick your own poison. So I'll give you 4 options. They are COVID, crypto, carceral, or cops.
Wait, what was the third one?
Carceral. Prisons.
Oh.
Well, we already talked about the cop summit, so maybe we should do cops.
I vote crypto. So now you have to break the vote, Aiden. It's your fault again.
Can I recast my vote? Anything but crypto. I will take any second pick you want.
Fine, we'll do the cop one. Let's shit on cops. They deserve it.
All right. Arguably the most depressing of all of them, but yeah, you did choose. So
I'm gonna lay in this bed.
How could I have done this?
Yeah. This is from the Philadelphia.
It can't be worse than the last one.
Inquirer. 2 teens were charged with murder in the police shooting that killed an 8-year-old girl at a high school football game.
All right, it's worse.
It's pretty fucked up.
All right, let me see if I understand this correctly, because my brain just like exploded. 2 teens who are not the police were charged with murder at the police shooting where the police killed a girl.
Correct.
My guess is the teens were running away from police.
Yeah.
And the police, instead of arresting them, tried to shoot them and killed.
When the police spray fired, assault weapons at a fleeing pair of teens and killed a child, that's really the teens.
I'm going to change my vote. Let's not do this story.
I don't want to mislead, so it was so bizarre that I read the subheading, and the article at least claimed that the teens were already in a gunfight with each other. And it sounds like this is a case of them being charged with felony murder for not actually injuring the girl at all, but
So this is one of the random encounters in GTA 5 where you're driving around and then you hear cops and you're like, wait, I don't have any stars, and the cops are chasing someone else, and if you let the cars get close enough, they get out of the car and start shooting at the cops start shooting at them, and bystanders could get shot.
Okay, but who killed Hannibal? Like, who killed the girl?
The cops.
So how is it not their fault? I don't understand.
You know that very awesome story where like some criminal broke into some did some robbery and then broke into this person's house, and then the cops brought in like a tank and blew up the house to arrest the guy, and the guy whose house was like, so you can replace my house? Nah. Because cops can't be charged.
Sue the criminal
for anything they do while trying to arrest people. Like, all the movies where there's a car chase and like the cops blow up like 100 times more civilians. The cops
becomes the highway scene in the second Matrix.
The cops aren't held responsible for that.
It's when
that's on the criminal. The criminal gets charged with all the additional crimes that the cops do in service of trying to arrest them.
It's like when they took fireworks from a guy who was selling them illegally or whatever, and then disposed of them and blew up a city block in like LA.
Yeah, that was awful.
Cops are hilarious.
They charged that guy.
Oh my god!
And I was just reading for a different thing, but I almost don't want to use an article because it's too dark, so I may as well talk about it now.
Sure.
In the Ahmaud Arbery case, which I was reading about because it tied into some of these other police killings, Black Lives Matter issues. The details were basically they saw a black guy jogging, they assumed he must have done the burglary that they were thinking about because he's a black guy who's running at speed. So they cornered him and shot him to death. Like, it's like, even besides the racism and even besides the like insane cruelty of it, the cops basically described like having this guy dead to rights, like they knew he couldn't get away. Why'd they kill him? Right? Like the police are using lethal violence in situations they already are winning.
Aren't there? Wait, am I thinking of a different case? Isn't the armed robbery one where people who weren't cops killed him and the cops just didn't save him? Yeah, it was some guy and his son. They weren't active duty police.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different case, but I'm pretty sure it's the armed robbery case.
Oh,
I'll look up the article in a bit, but basically the police were just saying, we had him cornered. He couldn't get away, even though again it's not the right person anyway. But a guy who they thought had just done a burglary, which is not a violent crime, is then killed because they think he's a criminal and they need to get him. But this kind of Wild West attitude of like lethal violence is justified against criminals. Well, first of all, only in cases where your life is threatened is there any legal precedent for that. Like if they have to use violence, which is almost never the case. And two, you don't have to do it. Like you could very easily capture people and then determine it. You don't even know if they're criminals yet because they haven't had a trial. So the sort of the wild police willingness to start shooting themselves, start shooting as well, is so insane. And it's just this cowboy shit. It's just police want to shoot things. They enjoy it. They want to feel like they're superheroes saving the day. And it's like, you're just killing people. It doesn't matter why you're killing people. At the end of the day, very few things you're stopping could be worse than what you're doing. You're not stopping a mass shooting. You're just like shooting someone who's probably the wrong person anyway. And even if it is the right person, it's like, well, okay, they stole a TV and you murdered them. So who's the villain? One of these crimes is bigger. Because they always do this and they're like, well, was it a criminal? As if that was the question. Doesn't matter if they're criminals. Stop shooting them.
The thing I find really funny is the prototypical right-wing criticism of like black people is, well, look at the south side of Chicago. Gang violence leads to innocent bystanders getting shot. Except, reverse Uno. This time, the two idiots shooting at each other didn't kill anyone, and the cops who intervened killed the innocent bystander. So they can't even get their own tropes right.
Sorry, I think in the Arbery case, it was like one of them was an off-duty cop or something. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was so off-duty cop and his son. They
were not. It is an intermediate position. Police involved, but not explicitly the police. Yeah. It's kind of the gray area.
Still, people who feel emboldened to use weaponry, to act like we're living in Deadwood, and you could just go around with a pistol on your side, and if someone looks at you wrong, you can slice their fucking throat.
Yeah,
it's not how a civilized society works.
Exactly.
We have laws, we have civilized structures, we have courts. Courts exist to solve this. Stop taking justice into your own hands.
So often, the question obsessively becomes: did they do this? Did they not do that? Yeah, it's never the question of does that justify them being killed? Is that what this is supposed to be? Is that supposed to be the way things work? Because, I mean, it doesn't matter to me at all. If you're cashing fake checks, obviously you don't deserve to die. But even if you broke into a home and robbed it, you don't deserve to die. That's not justice. The justice system is supposed to be, even in the horribly vindictive framework we have right now, it's supposed to be about fair judgment, about commensurate justice. Ideally, it should be about rehabilitation. But even now, what the rhetoric put forward is that it's at the very least you are held accountable and face punishment adjusted to your acts. But no, it's just for police. It's kill or don't kill. And
I don't think there's a lot of statutes where burglary is punishable by execution.
You'd be surprised, right? If you read
yet it happens all the time.
Yep.
The ratio of like shoplifters to getting killed is insane.
It's just we don't need it. Like the burden to society represented by petty theft is not only far less than the burden of, say, wage theft, which is vastly outstrips this kind of theft, but it's just not a big enough deal to justify murder. Like murder is a far more, both from like even just an economic standpoint, a far more expensive thing for a society to deal with than the petty theft that goes on. And from an ethical perspective, it's not even a question. I mean, murder is obviously one of the most heinous things that can happen. Having that occur by officers of the state because they want to stop a guy from like stealing a Snickers, which happens more often than you'd like, which is to say at all. Yeah, I don't know why anyone's sitting down in like a rational position thinking about these problems could be like, hey, if he's did the crime, time for him to be shot. But that's like American public opinion, especially on the right, has basically just decided any crime is punishable by death if you resist arrest.
Correct.
Or if you're trying to flee.
Do we have any like giant potato stories or something?
Why?
Well, I mean, you did post a picture of Scalia.
It's all been so uplifting.
I feel like who's the main character from Deus Ex? Jensen. I'm like, I never asked for this. Like, this is brutal. I'm getting like, I didn't consent to these news stories.
You need to tough it up, because this ain't changing week by week.
All right, what's coming down the pipe?
No, I'll
preparing my anus.
I'll give you a softball. We'll return to the eastern continent of Asia. I believe this is from Singapore. Arrest warrant issued for teen accused of backflipping into rhino enclosure after he fails to wake up for court.
So he slept backflip?
What?
So he backflipped, and then I guess...
Wait, so the crime is doing sick flips.
Yeah.
And the arrest warrant is because he didn't show up to court for doing sick flips.
Except that the grammar of the sentence makes it seem like he did the backflip while asleep into a rhino enclosure.
That's pretty sick.
Alex, this grammar takes.
I'm just saying, fix your fucking shit. You have one job. You have one job. You have
They're
one
not
job.
gonna do grammar right.
Make a coherent sentence.
There's no time.
We gotta find this guy.
This is a great story. I love it. Man, doing sick flips at rhinos? Dude's already taking his life into his own hands.
Apparently,
and let me guess, he's a social media influencer.
I don't know, but I just
arrest warrant out for TikTok.
Yeah, it looks like he's on Snapchat, so he probably is. Looks like he also killed a frog.
What?
I don't know.
Like a monster.
What is this, Logan Paul?
He went to some zoo or something.
The Asian Logan Paul?
Oh, he killed a frog like he assassinated the frog like it was an intentional choice? He didn't just like fuck around and land on it or something?
I don't know. I just
he did a sick flip onto it.
Yeah, that's what I assumed they meant. Like he landed on a frog.
One of those crushing videos that the crazy Catholic was complaining about.
He's lucky the fucking rhino didn't kill him. Rhinos are pretty fucking ornery and extremely dangerous.
Apparently, they respected his gnarliness.
They were like, "Man, that guy's an idiot. Get
away from him. That guy can kickflip. You don't want to fuck with him." So this is a tricky sentence. I think I've got the wording that they could have used. Teen who backflipped into rhino enclosure has an arrest warrant issued for him after he fails to wake up for court. That would be the grammatical way to make this make sense.
You could also just break into two sentences.
That is also possible.
For doing sick flips at rhinos.
Yeah.
He didn't show up for court, so that was an arrest warrant for him.
Right. Well, that's the even easier way. Yeah. I'm just saying because I don't want to do like the grammar Nazi thing for its own sake, but if you didn't understand what happened, it's kind of important.
I want to see the judge like roll out the scroll of the crime he's charged with.
Yeah.
This is a Monty Python sketch. You can't do sick flips into rhino enclosures.
Well,
I love it.
I don't.
We gotta find art for this.
I don't know much about the Singapore justice system.
Not great. That's what you need to know.
But I know it also would be great to if this were to happen in Japan, because this next article from BBC, as I like complete sicko, make things dark again. Japan death row inmates sue over same-day executions.
You gotta give us a day.
Wait, same day as what?
I just watched my comrade get lethally injected.
So apparently, according to this article, anyways, in Japan, if you're on death row, you do not know if you'll be executed that day until you're told. So you wake up.
Oh, like zero notice execution.
Zero notice. Yeah, it's not like you do the crime and then you're killed.
You just got convicted of you're killed at the by the judge.
Right.
Like, I thought he took out a katana and beheaded you at trial. Like,
I didn't even know Japan has a death penalty.
Yeah, it's not good. They almost never use it, but when they use it, it's really bad.
And it's by hanging.
No, it's really awful. I mean, the death penalty is pretty awful no matter what context you choose. I mean, the method of death, some are more barbaric than others.
So they like jump it on you? Like, wait, why am I getting a big meal today? Oh no!
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Sounds
That
like
is
it.
brutal. Oh, although I don't know what's worse. Knowing for months and months, like the day, or just fucking surprise.
This is definitely worse because you can't like say goodbye to your family and everything because you don't like know to plan for it. It's pretty important that you know for the sake of making your end of life arrangements. Within the barbaric context of being executed.
This could have been simpler. Japan death row inmates sue over executions. That also would have sufficed. How about don't kill us?
Yeah.
Pretty fucked up.
To return to something funnier, in the previous article, he fails to wake up for court. I would just like to point out that failing to wake up is a very funny
is a cop code for killing someone.
Yeah,
he failed to wake up after
suspect fails to wake up in police-involved shooting.
After we tactically projected, cartridges in his direction.
Yeah.
An officer-adjacent failure to regain consciousness.
After 6 guys sat on him for 10 minutes until he choked to death, he failed to wake up for the ambulance.
His heart failed to show up for to the gym to pump blood.
But I would just like to say, failing to wake up in a funnier context, like I do that all the time. Like, but usually it's called like sleeping in or missing your alarm clock. It's like he failed to awaken. Like it's a choice.
Yeah, it's like
he laid down and it's like your subconscious should have known.
Yeah, it's a skill check.
Yeah. He didn't do the drink of water before you go to bed trick, so you automatically wake up. Like I don't even know what that means.
In America, we just say fail to show.
Yeah, he was a no-show.
Here they're criticizing his sleeping habits too. It's like,
it's too specific. It's like guy who backflipped a rhino enclosure is late to court because of extreme diarrhea. It's like, that
he didn't have a complete breakfast. I'm like, what? What's this weird ass judgment?
He had a panic attack and couldn't show up at court. Like, we don't care. Just say whether he showed up at court.
They're already judging him for doing sick flips on rhinos, which is like a miscarriage of justice in the highest order.
Yeah.
He was just trying to do the leg lock move.
That's a fucking Darwin Award. Like, let nature take its course. You don't have to execute him.
He was trying to do the sick leg loss flip up onto the horse.
Yeah.
Still only counts as
now he gets a warrant out for him.
He only counts as one challenge.
Singapore has no chill.
No, they really don't.
Well, I'm only going to do one more headline to close this out, but because I always forget to carry over the ones that I don't do, I'm just going to briefly summarize the crypto one. Apparently, the new mayor of New York City wants to be paid in Bitcoin and also wants crypto to be taught in schools as a curriculum.
That's funny. There's a lot of athletes now trying to get their salaries in crypto.
I'm sure.
Except, see, for the mayor, he's only going to get like 4 Bitcoins, whereas the athletes can get a shitload.
Yeah, divide a coin that's worth like $30,000 into bite-sized.
30? Where you been? It's worth like 60.
Oh, did it change the last 5 minutes? I can't keep track.
We've had our ups and downs throughout this episode. So
what was the car store one? Was that this one?
The car store one was the Japan one.
Okay, yeah.
Man, the idea that people would get paid in a currency that fluctuates that much and can raise in value that much that quickly, no one's insane enough to actually
wild.
Yeah.
Let's
the grape ape NFT is the next thing for the curriculum.
Grape ape.
Let's return to the endless well of the Atlantic to close us off.
The depths of the Atlantic.
And appropriately, I am salty as we draw water from the Atlantic.
How to get back to normal. Getting back to normal is only possible until you test positive from the Atlantic.
What?
For HIV, it's totally changing course from what we expect. Yeah.
Yeah. This seems to be about a guy who thinks that who got COVID. It's like, wow, all these people need to stop worrying because it wasn't as bad as it could have been for me. So get COVID, test positive, stop worrying.
Wait, did you read it?
I read the last paragraph because I wanted to see what his conclusion was.
Because I assumed this was like a lib thing about like a breakthrough case.
In what way?
Like, we thought we could get the economy and our lives back on track now that we have a vaccine, but oh no, Delta broke through my defenses. Now everything's ruined again. I thought that's what this was saying.
No, it was basically like he was vaccinated. I think it was a breakthrough. I didn't read the whole article, but I think he went to like a wedding or something, and then he got it, and at least the conclusion is like, yeah, we need to get back eventually. Things are opening up, so we all have to accept that we stop stressing so much about this.
Well, it's kind of what I thought it was, just with a weirder conclusion.
Yeah. It was very long too. So I feel like it's someone who was really deep in their bag.
I am still struggling with just the headline itself.
That's fair. It
doesn't even make sense.
So I was getting back to normal late one night, and then suddenly, COVID. Now I have regressed to abnormal.
But what?
The title should probably be, you can only feel safe and comfortable until you test positive for COVID. Like, he's not really saying getting back to normal in like a meaningful sense. He's just kind of saying his feelings, like his feeling of normalcy, his feeling of safety has been shattered by the public reaction to his breakthrough case.
Also, don't let me warp your understanding, because I barely skimmed it. So I could also, be guiding you in the wrong direction.
Well, you can only get back to normal so long as you don't read this.
Yeah,
This is
I won't.
totally inscrutable. What the fuck is he saying?
It's the Atlantic. Inscrutable is the best possible outcome, because the other outcomes are righteous rage and like unrighteous depression. Like, there's not a lot of ways you can go with
is
an
he
Atlantic
saying
article.
He regrets trying to get back to normal by going to this wedding where he ended up getting COVID, and so we should not return back to normal?
Could be.
What the? Like, if you just want to meander your verbal diarrhea, do so. But don't, trick us.
Oh, I want to. Yeah.
Just say, I want to rage about, I want to talk about this cool travel trip where I went to New Orleans. Oh, it turned out bad. I got COVID. Like, all right, no one's going to read it. But that's what you get.
No, everything needs to be a lesson that you can pontificate.
Right. And this is a theme we've been seeing a lot with these articles. Every single asshole who writes these thinks they're a goddamn Edward R. Murrow, and that they have to impart on the idiot masses the information, the moral clarity that they need to live their life. You don't matter. Shut the fuck up. We're reading you to make fun of you.
If you can write an article about your experience with COVID, you're not really that victimized.
If you're not
dead or dying, you're not really the big victim of COVID. The entire fucking global South is unvaccinated because we didn't create a global vaccine because we're assholes as a corporate and Western class, not us specifically. Like, they're the victims, and the people in the United States who were dying because we didn't have a response to this before the vaccine are the victims. This guy's not the victim. He's moderately inconvenienced by a breakthrough case that probably has no long-term consequences for him, except that he gets some money for writing a dumb article. The global South is fucked. We're not back to normal. The world is fucked. You have to fix it. Like, we will get breakthrough case after breakthrough case because we're going to get 1,000 different variants of this thing until we fix that problem. And our response to that is not like we've ethically failed 90% of humanity. It's, I can't go to Disney World without people being upset. This is irrelevant. No one gives a shit. Who cares? Okay, so you got COVID and you're out for a week. Well, you were vaccinated, so you're fine.
I've been cheating. I've been reading it some.
Oh.
He's just trying to do the, well, we're not taking it seriously enough. Oh, well, we have breakthroughs. And what does normal mean? Come on, we've all been living this for 18 months. We fucking get it. We don't need you to everyone has decided what side they're on. You're either with Aaron Rodgers or you're with the doctors. Everyone's decided. You're not convincing anyone. You're not convincing people who write the policies. You're not convincing the corporations that have the mandates and the protocols. You're not changing anyone's mind. So you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
And the guy ends it with I don't have any solutions. Well, you're not even trying to change people's minds. So
you're
shut up.
You're trying to give people a 15-minute thing to read and learn.
Right,
nothing.
you're just trying to get a little bit of money for writing this giant article that says ultimately nothing. You're trying to scam the publisher. You're trying to scam the Atlantic, is what it is. Really.
Don't make me like this guy.
I believe very much in therapy, but I do not think that people should be paid to therapize themselves through op-eds. I think that can stay in private conversations with professionals.
If I wrote an article that was like, I missed out on $18 of savings from a Steam sale, I need to tell everyone for 15 minutes about how upset that makes me. That would be more valuable than this.
I write this giant article about how Steam sales are arbitrary and they put undue pressures to buy stuff quickly, and they really made you miss out on that cool RPG.
Getting back to normal is only possible till you realize that you missed a daily.
Until you missed the summer sale.
Yeah. That is what this is. There are no stakes from a privileged person with an issue that basically will never affect them again. Time to read for 15 minutes. No conclusion.
The Steam summer sale gave me PTSD.
Right. I will never recover from those $18 that I could have saved.
God, just this article is just it's like 18 paragraphs of hemming and hawing. Well, I wanted to go to this wedding, but then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll get COVID there. Oh, I got COVID there, but Louisiana is so beautiful. By the way, here's like a link to travel plans. Like, just stop it. Stop it. Get some help.
Get help.
God. The media is failing us. Do better, media.
I mean, it's working for the podcast, but the American public getting hosed.
It's failing me. Here's my 15-minute op-ed about how the media is failing me.
Can we delete this picture of Scalia? It's making me literally nauseous.
No, I think we got to use it somehow. I don't know. Just scroll up.
Great.
For people's reference,
it's like that episode where you posted the fucking image of Hillary Clinton and she's
that was horrible.
ghostfully staring me down.
For the audience's reference, we're not all in the same room, so in order for us to share these links and communicate, we're communicating through text, and so I'm occasionally posting images or headlines or stuff in here, and some of them are to for reference later, or some of them are just to make my co-hosts feel bad. And
getting back to normal is only possible until you see this caricature of Antonin Scalia.
So you see political drawings of Supreme Court justices.
I need to now write about this in a long paper.
All right, I'll do one more.
We got an encore.
This is I'll give this a intro of my own, which is when capitalism and militarism walk into a bar. This is from the Miami Herald. Metallurgist admits faking steel test results for Navy subs.
Oh man, I saw this one. This is awesome.
Oh boy.
This is amazing. The American government is cheap and so full of shit and trying to get the lowest possible bid for their contracts. They are willing to let our subs implode, killing hundreds of people in the armed services because they're cheaping out on contracts. It's highly
trained and valuable people too, because like
so good.
It's not every person can go on a sub.
The American government invests hundreds of thousands of dollars into these people. ROTC programs, high-level training, essentially master's and doctorate level for military stuff, and we're just letting them die in like cheap tin cans.
Yes,
it's so good.
But what if your sub wasn't safe to go underwater?
Wouldn't that be absolutely hilarious?
Anyone who says, "Isn't this? Aren't we recording this on like Veterans Day weekend or something?" Like
on Veterans Day,
whatever. Like,
exactly.
This is such a slap in the face. Every time you hear someone say, "Oh, we're doing this for our arm. We thank you for securing our freedoms." One, that's a lie, because sending Americans to go kill foreign people is protecting our freedoms. But two, America is not securing our armed services people's freedoms. The freedom to life and liberty. No, the freedom to die under pressure in a submarine.
I mean, this is how it always goes. I mean, after the first Gulf War, like 40% of the soldiers we sent there got horrible, like cancer and other issues because of the insane chemical weapons we were just testing out for fun in that week-long war. This is nothing new. The U.S. government abuses their armed services for really no reason, just like callousness. Yeah, I mean, they may as well be like Tuskegee because they just do whatever the fuck they want. And it's like, oh, did that cause cancer? Sorry to hear it. Good luck. Oh, did your submarine implode? We'll make a memorial statue. It's cheaper than fixing the submarine.
How in the world did they get this guy to admit this? That's what I want to know.
I'll grant the government this. It's entirely possible, because I didn't read the details of this, that they thought it was legitimate and that it was going to be strong and that he misled them. But come
Of
on.
course, yeah.
At a certain point, you don't double check his work.
The only way he could give a bid that was cheaper was to scam the system, which is to fake the strength of the metal, which is why he won the contract. And the government people who gave out the contract should have known this isn't doable at this price. It doesn't make any sense. There's obviously going to be some compromise somewhere.
Hundreds of millions or billions of dollars investment and thousands of lives potentially invested, and you don't double check the work of a self-interested asshole selling you an underpriced bid. At a certain point, that's like a negligence that's unfathomable, which may as well be malice.
And we all saw this in real time with the border wall. All of us lived through immense coverage of all the podunk corporations and idiots coming together. It's like, yeah, Trump, I'll build the wall for free. I'll build it for a tenth of budget. I'll build it for $1 billion. And it was like, they are all garbage. Every single submission was garbage.
I want to point out once again, soldiers in this country get fucked like over and over again. We saw in a few episodes ago, like, oh, the suicide rate is massively increased for both veterans and active duty people. No coverage. No one cares. Like, this is not a big story. No politicians are running on fighting that. We have completely lied to them about their purpose and value. Defending America. It's like all we've ever basically done is do wars of aggression. They get propagandized too constantly about something they never actually get to do, which is like defend us meaningfully from evils. We underpay them. We don't cover their problems when they come home. Almost all of them with some sort of PTSD or severe physical debilitation. The majority of people who go into the military start conservative and come out like leftists because of what they experience,
or psychopathic,
or like damaged beyond politics. And I just want to say, like, if you're thinking about going into the military, don't. You're not going to have a good time. You're going to get abused. And if you're already suffering from that shit, I'm sorry. Like, I don't like war. I think it's pretty fucking horrific. But what's happening to our own, for basically no reason, is also horrific. And is really, like, it could not be a more blatant dereliction of duty by every part of our political sphere to let the people we supposedly put on this pedestal suffer every fucking problem there is: homelessness, suicide rates, drug addiction, crippling medical bills, all these things. And just be like, whatever.
I don't think saying they'd be abused is even enough. You might be hazed, raped. You might be murdered.
Oh yeah, well that's a whole other element.
I mean,
yep.
Like, no, just no. Hard pass.
Yeah.
You might want to help your country.
Bad.
They will not pay you back.
Yeah, and even if your intentions are pure, the whole culture and structure of the military is about following authority. So you will, in the end, be following the directives of your superiors and their orders from the government, from corporate interests,
and they'll pack you into a death trap.
Yep. So it's
as seen with the article.
You won't even have autonomy to do what's right in almost every case. So that's the sad truth of things.
Yeah, and remember all of these fucking things the next time a politician's like, support our troops, and then they send them to have all these things happen to them and don't give a fuck ever. They don't care. They've never cared. It's just a talking point.
And with that, we still managed to end on something a bit less depressing than a self-indulgent story about COVID. So I'm going to count this as a success.
I see this as an absolute win. Yeah.
Still only counts as one.
Well, you know what? I don't feel completely black-pilled. I have a little bit of fire left after all this. So I think that's a win.
You know,
I'm going to go jump in a dumpster.
Okay. I guess I've transferred it to him.
Yeah, I see those as both wins. I paid Jason back for what he does to me, and giving Alex a break. So, absolute win.
Well, just don't land on any homeless vets in that dumpster, please. They have it bad enough. All right, folks. Well, this was, an
episode.
It was an episode. Hopefully, you got some smiles.
I feel attacked.
I think next week we'll probably do a deep dive or something, but we've already gone on too long. So we will see you next time on another episode of the pod.
See you next time.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential workers podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.